Happy holidays to everyone, and it's Good Friday for the Christians. For every other person, I believe it's just a time to rest and spend time with your family members, and we're happy to be a part of your story through Channels Television. This is Business Morning. We have just about 55 minutes to do business, current and relevant business conversations. That's our tradition here. I'm Ini John Mekwa, and I'm here to do business. Well, oil prices today surged as investors fear a prolonged war in the Middle East that will block tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz for weeks. Comments from the U.S. President Donald Trump yesterday during a national address warned of further military aggression against Iran in the next 2 to 3 weeks, dampening hopes for an immediate de-escalation in the conflict and driving oil prices even higher. However, prices eased from this height after reports from Iranian state news agency said that working with Oman to draft a protocol to monitor transit through the critical waterway between the two countries. So what that has done to the numbers this morning is almost 8% increase on Brent, 7.99%. It's back up there, $109.24 a barrel. For WTI, it's 11.93%, almost 12% increase since that broadcast by President Donald Trump. $112.06. And it's very important to note this very unusual scenario. We would normally see that Brent is about $4 or $5 higher than WTI, but the reverse is the case now. WTI is $112, while Brent is $109. Now, this most likely is connected to the fact that all of this tension comes from the United States. We know that's where that's what they use. WTI is what they use, and President Trump is at the heights or at the peak of all of this tension that we are seeing. Well, this has attributed the increase. That's President Trump has attributed the increase in oil prices to Iranian regime launching deranged terror attacks against commercial oil tankers and neighboring countries that have nothing to do with the conflict. But of course, we know all of this started when the United States and Israel launched an attack on Iran. And of course, Iran has retaliated in one way or the other. Nigeria's oil and condensate reserves fell slightly by 0.74% year-on-year to 37.01 billion barrels. That's as of January 1. This is according to the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, the NUPRC. The drop from 37.28 billion barrels last year is attributed to production activities in 2025. Oil production also dipped, averaging 1.48 million barrels per day in February, and that's down from 1.62 million barrels per day in January. Gas reserves, however, grew 2.21% to 215.19 trillion cubic feet, and it's been boosted by new discoveries and better reservoir studies. The NUPRC notes that the reserves life index stands at 59 years for oil and 85 years for gas. The markets yesterday, talking about the local bourse, the oil share was almost unmoved, just a little bit down at the close of trade, retaining the 201,000 level and also the 129 trillion naira level looks close there to 130. But I guess this number will stay this way until Tuesday, because we know the markets are closed today as well as on Monday. So on Tuesday, we'll see movement there. But for yesterday, a lot of red when we look at the activity. The volume was red, the value was red, as well as the deals. Deals less slightly when you compare it to the previous day, 49,676. Value 19.26 billion naira and volume 559.98 million. And when we look at closely, we see the top gainers: Unilever, FTG Insurance, and Multiverse. Those were the top gainers there, almost 10%, which is the maximum allowed for a daily gain. Top losers were John Holt, Abbey Buildings, and Intergens. They lost almost 10% also. But top trade, NSL Tech, for the third day running, we've seen NSL Tech there topping trades. Wema Bank also made it to that group, as well as VFD at the close of trade yesterday. The federal government has unveiled an ambitious plan to reposition its palm oil industry, targeting a 10% share of the global market and creating up to 2 million jobs, and this should happen within 6 years. The strategy presented by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture aims to transform the sector into a major driver of economic growth, spanning food production, manufacturing, and exports. Officials say that the plan focuses on boosting yields, expanding cultivation, and modernizing processing infrastructure. The government also plans to support smallholder farmers with improved seedlings, financing, and market access as Nigeria looks to reverse years of decline and regain its position in the global palm oil market. Now, the Minister of Marine and Blue Economy, Dr. Adegoye Oyetola, has announced that Nigeria's proposed national shipping line is close to becoming operational, marking a significant step in efforts to strengthen the country's maritime sector. He made the disclosure during a stakeholders engagement and performance retreat in Lagos, noting that the government has recorded substantial progress towards reviving a national carrier to boost indigenous shipping capacity. Mr. Oyetola revealed that top global maritime companies, including AD Ports Group and DP World, have indicated interest in partnering Nigeria on the initiative. He explains that the new national shipping line is expected to reduce the country's dependence on foreign carriers, retain more maritime revenue within the domestic economy, and create more employment opportunities for Nigerians. The Central Bank of Nigeria has inaugurated its first Payment Service Providers Committee to drive growth and innovation in the country's fast-growing digital payment sector. The Deputy Governor Economic Policy at the CBN, Abdullahi Sani, says the committee will unite key providers and regulators to tackle industry challenges. Mr. Sani adds that the momentum continues into 2026, highlighting the sector's growing role in trade and economic growth.
In about a month from today, we'll be launching a new payment systems vision that really outlines where we see the entire ecosystem going in the next 3 years. That vision has been co-created together with the financial technology players, the mobile money operators, payment service providers across the board. And so what you're really going to see over the next couple of years is significant growth in this system, growth that is inclusive, that ensures that many more Nigerians are able to use digital financial services to alleviate poverty, to provide growth, to do their businesses, and ensure that Nigeria continues to play a leading role in this space in a way that also avoids and takes care of fraud-related practices, anti-money laundering, or terrorism financing, to ensure that Nigeria continues to stay off the grey list and continues to advance in our financial stability space.
It's a celebration period now, and of course, a lot of eating and drinking. Let's look at our protein supply in Nigeria at this time, and I guess this becomes more topical because of the news that the federal government is planning to bring in a Chinese firm to invest $900 million in the poultry sector. And the reason for this is to increase egg production by 6 million daily. And the Poultry Farmers Association of Nigeria, Poultry Association of Nigeria, they have a thing or two to say about this. I wonder if the federal government considered their side of the story before coming to this conclusion. But we have in the studio the Vice Chairman, Poultry Association of Nigeria for Ogun State, Mr. Ahmed Ali, to comment on this. Mr. Ali, good morning. Happy holiday to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Happy holiday.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously you guys have heard this news. What are your thoughts? What have people been talking about concerning this?
Okay, thank you. Concerning the investment from the Chinese investors, we've Let me start by saying the top 5 poultry farms we have in Nigeria today are owned by foreigners. So it's not new that we have foreign investment in the poultry sector. Out of the 5, 2 out of those 5 have been around for over 40 years, and they've been, operating without any problem. But the information about us having a $900 million injection into that sector, there's no way it's not going to, create a kind of disruption. We are not saying no investment, or we need investment definitely, because of course in the last couple of years we've had a series of challenges whereby farmers have to close shop because of high cost of feed, cost of grains and all that. And government have been magnanimous by bringing down the cost of grain. But like we had identified the last time, that despite the drop in the price of grains, the price of feed has not come down. The price of day-old chicks, which happens to be our seed, has also not come down. So it will be difficult for farmers to also bring down the price of egg. We read the report, and even in the report, it was clear that the government is trying to solve the problem of high cost of feed. So part of the investment is going to go into planting of grains, that is soya and maize, which constitutes about 90% of the feed for the birds. So if we have identified the problem, what the Poultry Association is saying is that we have identified the problem. Can we tailor this investment towards solving those problems rather than create another problems for farmers?
So what would, first in mind when I saw the story, I was like, what is the Chinese or the Chinese firms, what are they bringing? Don't you guys have the capacity to absorb this investment and make it yield the needed benefits?
Okay, thank you. In Africa today, Nigeria, we are the third largest in terms of poultry production. That's after Egypt and South Africa. So what has happened over the years is that the investment we have in that sector is it's 100, maybe like let's say 100% by private investors. So, and these are mainly Nigerians and foreign investors. So over the years, we've been having investment in that space. But it's like bringing in this amount at a time whereby we have other challenges. It's not as if we do not have problems here and there. But bringing in and then making it look like, okay, we're starting all over again. Because the $900 million investment is we're gonna have about six poultry farms in the 6 geopolitical zones, and then each zone will have about $150 million investment, and that $150 million will include setting up the poultry farm, and then planting about 10,000 hectares of grains. We're going to do irrigation and all that. So those investments is like starting all over a business that's already existing. So what's going to happen to the existing farmers? And mainly, 80% of the poultry farmers you have in this country today are smallholder farmers. And smallholder farmers are people that have birds of maybe like 50 to 10,000 birds. Those are 80%. So we have about 20% of those that are maybe like above 10,000. So by the time you bring in this, those smallholder farmers are going to be adversely affected. There's no doubt about it. Because the whole idea is to bring down the price of eggs. And as of today, the price of egg from the farm is 5,000 naira. Between 5,000 and 5,200 naira, depending on your location. And by the time I saw somewhere last week that egg is now 8,500 naira, we screamed. I mean, something that is coming from the farm at 5,000 naira is getting to the market at 8,500 naira. But of course, the middlemen will also say, okay, because of high cost of logistics to get from the farm to the shops and everything, so that makes it 8,500 naira. Yes, the price can still come down from 5,000 naira if and only if we're able to bring down the cost of feed, if and only if we're able to bring down the cost of day-old chicks. Just this week, something happened. On Monday, the price of the day-old broilers was sold for 1,750 naira. That was Monday this week. Yesterday, it came down to 1,150 naira. So what it means is that between Monday and yesterday, the price dropped by 600 naira. Good news. But for the farmer that bought 10,000 birds on Monday, has lost 6 million naira. Because what it means is that for the farmer that bought birds on Monday and the one that bought yesterday, they are still going to end up in the same market. So the price, variation it's so much that what we are looking at, what we are praying is that government should come together. We should come together, look at this sector, There are so many things that we can do to stabilize the price. We have identified it. The government has actually identified it, which is by saying that, okay, we want to bring this investment to reduce the cost of feed. Yes, we reduce the cost of feed. Once we reduce the cost of feed and the farmers are able to buy at a lower price, definitely the price of chicken and egg will come down.
So what would you rather that the government does, either through this investment or, how would you rather that they tailor it to make it, at least to reduce, we know there'll always be a cost to it, but at least to reduce that cost, especially to those already existing in the poultry industry?
What we're simply saying is that government should tailor the investment towards areas where we have challenges. Over the years, we have grown the poultry industry. The poultry farms have grown, coming up every year. But we've not actually developed the crop production, which is the maize and the soya production. So as the poultry farms are increasing by the day, the grain production is...
Which is why we always have issues with the feed mill.
Exactly.
So would you say that this $900 million, for instance, whether that should be with the Chinese or the Nigerian farmers, I want you to help tailor it exactly.
The investment can come from, like I said earlier, we have foreign investors in the sector. So what I'm saying is that we should tailor that investment to where we have challenges. So we don't have enough grains. Last year we had to import grains just to bring down the price of grains. So if we are taking these funds to say, okay, let us increase production in the area of maize, soya, so that the price can come down, that's fine. Today, we have what we call grandparent stock. So the grandparent stock is like the seed that produces the eggs that we hatch. We have 3 companies that have license for grandparent stock in Nigeria today. Out of the 3, we have only 1 hatchery with grandparent stock. Can we increase the number of hatcheries with grandparent stocks so that we can increase supply of day-old chicks? So that if we increase the supply of day-old chicks, the price of day-old chicks can also come down. Because in a situation whereby few years back, we were buying the layer day-old chicks for like 500, 600, 700 naira, and today we are buying at 3,000 naira. Those costs will definitely affect the price of egg and chicken.
All right, so this investment is not like it's a bad one.
No, really.
Even the foreigners' intervention is not like a bad one.
No.
But it should be channeled to either the feed mill
exactly.
or the day-old chicks.
It should be solving the problem, not creating. Because what we have now is that if you have the investment and we have new poultry farms,
and we have excessive competition for the already
so the smallholder farmers that will not be
able
able to compete will have to close shop again.
All right, thank you so much. We pray you don't close shop, please. Jobs will be at stake.
Yeah.
Mr. Ahmed Ali, Vice Chairman, Poultry Association of Nigeria for Ogun State. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
All right, now earlier we told you about what the Minister of Blue Economy is doing, how he's promising that the shipping lines will be operational soon. And this was during the first quarter engagement with stakeholders, and he said even much more in this report. 26 first quarter citizen stakeholders engagement is set to review not just conversations in the blue economy for the period, but also results and prefer ways to fix gaps in operations and achieving targets.
This gathering reflects our commitment to a governance approach that is inclusive, transparent, and result-driven. By bringing stakeholders, policymakers, and institutional leaders into the same room, we are fostering alignment between policy formulation, implementation, and public expectations.
The meeting is also an opportunity for the minister to clear the air on the seeming lack of attention given to ports outside Lagos, especially after the Nigeria-UK port upgrade deal.
The procurement process for the modernization of ports in Warri, Port Harcourt, Onne, and Calabar are already underway. We are committed to a balanced and inclusive development of port infrastructure across the country. In addition, approvals have been granted for the development of new deep-sea ports, including the Agge Deep-Sea Port in Bayelsa State, the Bakassi Deep-Sea Port in Cross River State, the Ebon Deep-Sea Port in Akwa Ibom State, and the Ondo Deep-Sea Port in Ondo State.
For the stakeholders, this platform is a good time to share concerns.
We have the ports through which these cargoes are handled. I'd like to commend the work of my friend, the MD of NPA and his team, supported by the government to modernize our ports. But we are modernizing the ports for foreign ships. We should start thinking of also our ships enjoying the use of these modern ports as they come. Approximately $8 to $9 billion are lost by our country to foreign ships who carry our cargo, import and export. Food for thought.
As the second quarter kicks off, engagements between policymakers and operators are expected to deepen for the solution of easing port operations and related factors. And now let's talk about Nigeria's fast-moving consumer goods sector. And we know for Nigeria is only second to South Africa when we look at the size, the market size of that sector. So we see it priced at about $25 billion. That's a lot, but I tell you, if you look closely at the details of Nigeria's FMCG, you might laugh a bit because the contents the most active components there are not things that you thought they would be, but we're second after South Africa, so I leave it to you to go and watch out for that. And then Nigeria is the second after South Africa on the continent. Nigeria is part of a $42 billion of the top five on their continent. A great performance. We've seen the fastest growing on the continent. But when we talk about that growth, then a worrying factor comes up, is about 54.1%. Gross recovery we see is at 34.3% in the previous year. Overall, we see markets expanding at 12%. But the worrying thing is it's not expanding because there's an increase in volume. Unfortunately, it's because of the increase in price. And of course, the conversation of inflation comes into the picture with that. But let's dissect this even more with the General Manager of BIC Nigeria, Mr. Anthony Amawe, right here in the studio. Mr. Amawe, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Nini. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Happy holiday to you.
And to you as well. Thank you.
Great. So when we talk about, honestly, I had some laughs at the background, but I don't want to... the components of Nigeria's FMCG, fast-moving goods, the top on the list are some things that you would have thought maybe there are things like detergent and, some of those edibles, decent edibles, basic edibles. But I see that's not what makes up our top. But when we look at the sector generally, is a job-creating sector and it's progressing, even though when we talk of the progress, we also see some worrying factors underlying that. But what's your first impression about the sector in Nigeria?
I think you captured it aptly in your opening. In the last decade especially, it's been a very sad tale in terms of consumption. I think in terms of consumption, we've seen a dip. It's a big change in the shape of the FMCG sector in Nigeria. The shape has been really one of value-driven consumption instead of real volume. We have seen consumers exiting some categories entirely, going for more affordable propositions. We are also seeing consumers downtrading, going for options that simply offer value for money. For some categories where we find that they consider to be luxurious, they've just entirely exited that space. And so what you find in those spaces are consumptions that are driven by people who can afford versus the large mass. So it brings the question now to the fore. When we look at the population of Nigeria, are we looking at a market that is mass for all industries and sectors, or we are looking at addressable markets out of these 200 million plus people, an addressable market of how many? So this is basically how you start looking and dissecting the Nigerian economy in terms of addressable markets. If you now, on the flip side, look at the way it has panned out in the last 10 years especially, it's basically one of a shift in consumer behavior. Consumer behavior has shifted because of the the pressure on consumer wallets. And that has been driven by twin factors of a sheer impact of economic pressure and also structural changes that we see today in the economy. If you look at that specifically on the consumer behavior, it's more described by the fact that today consumers are more discerning. They are tilting towards affordability. They want the right price. They also want good performance. So they don't want to throw away performance on the altar of good pricing. So they want the best of both worlds. So the companies have now tilted their operating models to provide as much as possible what the consumers want, but also offer good value for money. So this is what you see.
Has that combination or shift, has it tilted towards local production?
Yes, it has. Yes, it has, because if you're going to be in a market like this, for not just for today, but sustainably, you've got to build resilience. And resilience is built by certain factors. First, it comes with a mindset that doesn't just want to eat everything on the table today. We're thinking about sustainable long-term presence and approach to addressing consumer needs in the market. And that's what you find big companies today that have not exited in the last couple of years. Of course, you know of some companies that have exited, and some are tilting their operating model and their level of investment to position themselves for the future. And that means that you then have to localize. To localize is beyond just having a manufacturing footprint. It's about building reliable and trusted supply partnerships. It's about supporting local content. It's also about ensuring that both the supply chain and distribution networks are strong and firm enough to be able to quickly address consumer needs. And as you see the landscape evolving from time to time.
There used to be a conversation that Nigerians' taste board has been acclimatized to imported goods. Has that changed? Maybe reality and pricing has.
they say in marketing that perception is reality. I think that it's about consumer communication, and it's also offering the right value and the right product quality. Sometimes the right product quality, and you can cite examples in Nigeria, for example. You produce a nice fashion wear from Aba, for example, and you put an Italian label, and people easily pick it up. You see, so
that hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed. As Nigerians, like I said earlier, Nigerians want affordable offerings, but they've not sacrificed performance. They've not sacrificed top quality. It's still there.
Yeah, but made in Nigeria doesn't mean it's underperforming.
That is where I said marketing communication needs to do better. And in all honesty, in the last also 10 years, that if we look back, we've seen some very great execution in terms of marketing in Nigeria. Very fantastic communication. In terms of marketing communication, there's been massive improvement that you can now begin to look at best practices around the world and begin to pick some executions in terms of nice campaigns, excellent consumer engagement from Nigeria. I think it's about how you engage the consumer, how you sell your proposition. You have a good product, yes, but in terms of how you package it, how you engage the consumers.
So you think local producers perhaps are not doing enough when it comes to marketing communication?
Yeah, I think that if you look at the multinationals have probably leveraged global best practices to do excellently well. When you now come to the small and medium scale businesses, there's a lot of room for improvement. And that's I think in terms of capacity building, support from NGOs, we need to do way better. I think in terms of engaging, and not just engagement in matching the words with action. Sometimes you see certain communications, but when you begin to engage the services, engage the goods, engage the producers in terms of real buying and selling and transactions, you don't get the same quality in terms of what was promised.
As was promised.
Yes, yes.
But do you think that, the geopolitical conflicts and the volatility going on, oil prices, which of course cascades into every other thing, do you think that can perhaps shape the trend of especially consumers' tastes and demand for the rest of the year?
Um, I think that the geopolitics and geoeconomics of the world uh, might not have um, maybe an immediate or direct impact on consumer consumption, but it would have on the way businesses are set up and the way businesses are impacted. But as you know, companies all over the world do not have control over what happens in external environment such as this. But what companies can do is to build resilience and ensure that the operating model is flexible enough to position the company to insulate as much as possible from such impact of this, such as issues such as oil prices,
Straits of
fluctuations.
Hormuz being
Absolutely,
being blocked,
yeah.
and so some goods or products or raw materials cannot get through. Fertilizer is the one most affected at this time. So
Yes.
who knows? One country might be able to get an alternative, to some of those components of
And
fertilizer.
speaking to that, the more a company localizes, the less the impact of global happenings and geopolitics and the geoeconomics of the world can impact. So if you look at companies that have, both in terms of local content, local sourcing, especially sourcing goods really from, you have built a trusted and reliable supplier networks. Sometimes you want to, but it's not just available locally. There are some raw materials that, depending on the industry, you're not able to source locally. And when you don't do that, you've got to depend on what comes from the global market. Some will be more hit than others. What you have is that it will impact consumers in terms of pricing, because those extra cost push that will come will be passed on to the consumers. And when it does, even when they have got a taste for more imported items, you'll see a shift, because the wallet will then begin to affect consumer choices. So this is
All right.
how these old dynamics play out.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Anthony Amawe, General Manager of BIC Nigeria, for your time and your
very
views
much.
this morning.
Thank you.
Let's take a break now. When we come back, digital transformation, we'll explore that conversation right here on Business Morning. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Still watching Business Morning right here on Channels Television. And now we're discussing, well, let's go to the digital space. The story that Ghana has now merged its national identification to its payment system is actually a big challenge to Nigeria. It's supposed to be the giant of Africa. But we see Ghana is the very first country. And I think it begins today, right today. In Ghana, it's kudos to them, and we hope Nigeria will be challenged by that. Let's see if we can push that conversation with Mr. Tunde Akabasharun. He is a co-founder of Cyberdean Solutions Limited. Mr. Akabasharun, good morning. Happy holiday to you.
Happy holiday, ma'am.
Yeah, so while I'm happy for Ghana, I must say I was a bit sad when I read that story that Ghana has now been able to just put every use into their identity card, so you can use it for identification and also for payments. And here we are, giant of Africa. It doesn't seem like we are there yet.
Nigeria is working on something like that. But obviously you have to understand that because of our numbers and our level of financial inclusion, there's still a lot of work to do before we can attain something like that. I think our population is almost 10 times the size of Ghana's. I'm not sure if that's accurate. I think we're over 200 million. I think Ghana is about 20-something million people. I expect that it might be easier for them to implement something like that.
Yeah, but I don't think we should keep giving ourselves excuses. We've been using population to be our pride. Let's not use it as an excuse.
Fair enough. I do know that there's a project along those lines in the pipeline.
Yeah, but it doesn't look like it's as if at the beginning of the pipeline, because we're still struggling to merge our national ID, our driver's license, your passport. You still have to do capturing and everything for them separately. You go to the bank, you have to do so. It seems like, well, this is just the beginning of the pipeline. That's where Nigeria is.
I actually beg to differ. I think there have been concrete conversations about infusing ID and ID systems and centralizing the data. So I think it's something NIMSI that I can say is working on. So I don't think it's at the beginning of, I would say it's not at the beginning of the
Is that the
pipeline.
middle?
Probably, probably. It's in the works, it's in the works.
Okay, but anyways, still talking about the cards and smart cards, we see a lot of, in the private sector, a lot of innovation and progress being made. I know that the government has attempted to localize or domesticate the production of smart cards. And, you know, I guess we're making some progress there.
So basically, to understand the card manufacturing space, I can use one scheme, Verve. I'm sure you're aware of Verve, the local scheme. So Verve, over the last 3 years, have gone from 35 million in 2022 to 50 million in 2023 to over 70 million in 2024 cards issued. So it shows that like there is scale in the market because millions of cards are being produced, right? And this is payment cards. There's also growth because these the e-channels, the digital channels are being used. So you've seen, I don't know when last you went to an ATM machine. I haven't been to one in a while. So in fact, the CBN says that ATM machines volume reduced from over 17,000 to 16,000 in 2024. But on the other hand, POS terminals increased by over 500,000. And the volume of transactions with those POSs went up from, I think, 4 billion in volume of transactions to 9 billion the very next year, showing almost triple increase. And the volume and the value of those transactions went from 41 trillion to 110 trillion in a year alone. So what it's showing is the market is growing, it's scaling, and there's adoption. And what it means for Nigeria as a whole is it makes Nigeria like, gives us the potential to become a regional hub for the smart card industry, not just in Nigeria, but in West Africa and even possibly the rest of Africa as well. So there's potential there.
Yeah, but I mean, other countries are also not sleeping. So we want to be a hub. Countries like Kenya, I mean, they don't joke with that.
Oh, no, yes, they don't. But if you look at World Bank's debit card data in 2024, Nigeria is ranking higher than Kenya in adoption for cards. We have 48 point something percent. Kenya is under 20%. Although you can say they use a lot of M-Pesa, which is their mobile money platform. But the point is, we have a lot more numbers and we have a lot more growth to experience over time.
And then when we talk about, before we celebrate this domestic manufacturing of cards, I mean, what percentage of the materials are actually local? What percentage are imported? Because, I mean, then we're just servicing the other countries.
No. So, valid question. So the card body, the plastic, the sheets are sourced abroad. The microchips are not made in Africa at all, so we have to source them abroad as well. But an interesting thing is, as recently as 5-7 years ago, many cards were imported. So you can imagine what that did to the economy. We had to literally service those with US dollars. But now with local manufacturing capacity increasing, we are spending our money and keeping our money in the system. So for instance, a commercial bank now will issue an award to a local manufacturer in Naira, who will source the materials in Forex but still end up servicing Naira. They will pay people, they will take on local labor, teach them skills and pay them in Naira. So it's, at the end of the day, it's a positive shift from what it used to be before. We're not there, but we are going the right direction in that sense.
Can we increase those gains? What stops us from actually having most, if not all, of that raw material from Nigeria?
Another good question. So we're lucky that we now have 2 local schemes, Verve and Afrigo. Afrigo is government-backed, and that helps because Afrigo's premise is to sell everything in Naira, all the materials in Naira, the modules, the holograms, which is the shiny bit on the card, so that manufacturers can basically process a full card in Naira, which will obviously help that, but Afrigo have to scale. Verve have already done it, but Afrigo is a government-backed scheme. But like, the whole point of this is we can't get there immediately. And the semiconductor business, which is industry, which is where the microchips are made from, is highly capital intense. I'm talking about multiples of billions of dollars. So unless the government wants to help us do that, I don't see, it's going to be very difficult for the private sector to do it locally by itself.
But presently, what percentage is local material? What percentage is imported?
Oh, no, sir, I'll be honest. The The labor and skill is local because we've trained, like at Cat40, we've trained our people, we send them to our partners abroad. They've gotten the training, they've come back, we've trained the trainer, we've done those certifications. But the core components of card manufacturing are imported, and that's the honest truth. They're
So
imported.
if we were to be able to get a government intervention, for instance, what's the low-hanging fruit when it comes to those components that you say, oh, we can just focus on this and it will be at least a little bit easier to scale and, you know, cut off the FX spending on that?
So I will come back historically. Before 100%, the spend was FX, 100% FX. Now it's reduced because now the labor and the infrastructure is here. So the only thing left are the materials. But you're right. The lowest hanging fruit would be the plastic sheets, because how a card is made from paper. But there are 5 layers of paper laminated together, compressed together, and cold and hot pressed to become one component, which is the card. So I think us at Cat40, we've also explored looking to manufacture the sheets locally. We've even thought about using recycled plastic waste from our factories and even other competitors in the space, and say, look, give us your waste, let us try and recycle. But these are things that are medium-term goals for us, because for us as well, we want to localize everything. We can't digitize effectively if we're relying on imported components. It's critical that we localize every aspect of this space if we want to truly digitize it.
So if they're made from papers, don't we have the trees and all that? Forgive my being a novice in this.
No, it's not. So there's certain grammage and quality of the paper
we don't have the trees that.
No. I'm certain. I'm not a.
Okay, you're not.
I'm not a tree expert.
Okay.
But I'm saying that so again, you have to look at the economies of scale. A lot of people buy components from Asia, especially China, because of their economies of scale and the fact that price point matters to us. So basically, at Cat40, our cost prices are usually in FX, but our revenue is in Naira. So it matters, every cent counts, pretty much. So it's a work in progress, really, in terms of this.
Okay, and then the other thing I was thinking about, since you talked about the chip, doesn't that present a security risk for Nigeria? I mean, seeing that it's imported.
No, because a chip is it's a part, it's a component. It's useless until it's encoded, which is done locally in our personalization bureau. So no data is transferred anywhere else. So for instance, a bank wants to issue cards, they give it to a card manufacturer like Cat40 and say, okay, make us 1,000 cards, Verve cards or Afrigo cards, no problem. This is our design, we do that. When we're done, the bank can ask us to personalize it. And these are things that are there are security features like PCI DSS, ISO certified, to make sure that information and data is secure. But again, you can't personalize outside Nigeria for Nigerians. So data is safe.
Okay, all right.
So
I was just curious about that. Thank you so much, Mr. Tunde Akabasharu, the co-founder of Cat40.
Cat40 Limited, yes.
Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome, ma'am. Thank you so much.
All right, now it's time to go global.
All right, for the global economy now, see Microsoft is making a massive bet on Japan's digital future with plans to invest up to $10 billion in centers and infrastructure. The move, reported by Nikkei, aims to boost local data processing and meet growing demand for data sovereignty, allowing sensitive information to stay within Japan. The tech giant is partnering with the firms like SoftBank, Sakura Internet, while expanding its Azure cloud capabilities with advanced AI chips and systems. This could become one of the largest foreign data center investments in Japan, highlighting the global race to dominate AI infrastructure. And in the US is escalating its trade war, this time targeting the global pharmaceutical industry. President Donald Trump has imposed a sweeping 100% tariff on patented drugs aimed at forcing drug makers to cut prices and shift production to America. Companies that refuse to comply could face steep costs, while those that agree to most favored nation pricing or move manufacturing into the U.S. may see tariffs reduced or eliminated entirely. With generics largely exempt and deadlines set within the month, this policy could reshape global drug supply chains and potentially drive up tensions across the healthcare and trade landscape. And we also have yesterday's close. Markets are closed today, but let's get a review of what played out in the market yesterday from our correspondent, Maria Bird.
The U.S. stock market took quite a bit of a dip on Thursday as the Dow Jones was down at 0.4%. The S&P 500 was also down at 0.2%, and the heavy tech Nasdaq was down at 0.3%. Many investors were responding directly to the president's speech on Wednesday evening, as the U.S. president did not give any new details but did state that the conflict doesn't end soon. There could be some escalation. As the U.S., Iran, and Israel conflict continues to have an impact on the U.S. economy and the U.S. stock market, it is clear that it also impacted oil prices on Thursday as they took another jump and spike in price. As the U.S. president has not yet said when the war will end, but he says it's coming to an end soon. But until then, the U.S. stock market is still finding itself in some challenges.
All right, thanks, Maria. Well, global markets are flashing warning signs as hedge funds are dumping stocks at the fastest pace in over a decade. Data from Goldman Sachs shows March saw the most aggressive global equity sell-off in 13 years, driven largely by rising short positions and growing fears of deeper market weakness. The move comes amid heightened geopolitical tension and volatility linked to the Iran conflict, which has rattled investor confidence and triggered sharp market losses across major regions. With hedge funds rapidly cutting exposure and betting against stocks, the big question now, are we seeing a temporary risk-off move or the early signs of a broader market downturn? And global investors are hitting brakes fast with hedge funds, dumping global stocks, the fastest pace. And we're definitely still tracking that at this point. And we see Google, they've launched Gamma, 4 open models under the Apache 2.0. At this point, a recent news there announced today. Definitely, we've already seen major AI bots already taking that news in the crypto segment at this time, with most of these meme coins already generating that name. Now we see Brazil's industrial sector showing signs of resilience. Industrial output rose 0.9% in February, beating market expectations and signaling a stronger than expected rebound in Latin America's largest economy. The growth outpaced forecasts of around 0.7%, suggesting that manufacturing activity is holding up despite tighter financial conditions and global uncertainty. However, on a yearly basis, output is still down 0.7%, highlighting ongoing structural pressures in the sector, even as short-term momentum improves. And that's it for the global economy. It's back to Ini.
Thank you so much, Laddie. And that's it on the program today. It's a Good Friday, so it's time to rest, it's time to socialize, it's time to have fun with family and friends. I'm Ini John McCall. I'll try to bring a bit of that before the weekend or before Monday. Thank you so much and see you on Monday, God's grace. Bye-bye.